Sorry, I can really this. I'm not tired. So you got to book your child. So you just your friends. You try to teach your friends how to guess. Always a guess. I think this story, I'm just something to talk about. I think it goes in our You can just, any yeah, that'd be good. That's it. Don't be tight. So I never have about that. Yes.
And Taiwo, can you hear me? Taiwo, can you hear me? If you can hear me, just type it. My voice is not clear. How about now? Is it still not clear? Ah, I want to hear me well now. Is it because of my AirPod?
I'm done now. I don't have Huh?
Okay, so how about now? Can you still hear me?
I'm giving you a regard.
Can you hear me clearly now? So can you hear me now? Irogene and then Taiwo. If you can hear me, please type or let me know so that I can know whether I should start or not. Okay, let me even use my other phone to join the live so that I can observe the stuff I like. Let me join with my other phone so that I can track how the thing is. Let me join with my other accounts. Let me follow up. And I'm coming now. Let me have to join with my other Gmail so I can track the stuff. Let me know how it's going. I'm coming. Okay. I'm coming now. Please give me a minute. Let me go to the join. I'm coming. Please give me a minute. Let me go to the join. Okay. Please give me a minute. Let me go to the network is off. Okay. So let's start now. I don't know whether this one will be saved later, but then however it is. Wait, can you hear me now, right? Can anybody hear me? Can anybody hear me? I want to start now. Can you hear me? Just type it. Can you hear me talk or let me start? Or if you don't talk, if you don't type now, I don't know whether you're hearing me. Okay, so we are starting now. So good evening, everybody. So I'm going to do a summary of what we did on our last meeting on C programming. Okay. So on our last meeting, so we talk about different stuff about C programming. Okay. From how the C came about, the programming itself. Okay. What else did we talk about? We talked about the definition of the C programming in general, what a programming language is, different kind of programming languages, and how the C programming, where the C program was derived from. What else we talk about? So we talk about what is it called? Um, so we talk about the compilation models. It's also called the compilation component. Okay, so what we may mention the preprocessor, the compiler, the assembler, and then the last one which is the linking. Okay, so we talked about the preprocessor. So under the preprocessor, we talked about the preprocessor directives. Okay, so which I said that's different parts. Okay, which include the input directive, the macro definition, the conditional component. Okay, so I'm going to be going. I'm going to be. I'll just run through everything again. Okay, so that we can save this thing. And can you hear me clearly? Someone say I'm too. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? So, okay, let's start now. All right. So talking about the C programming, so we have the C part, and then we have the programming part, which is the language. All right. So according to what is the material, what they gave us the material, they said C is a procedural language that is an imperative language. Okay. So I went further to break it down how they were able to derive this particular language, which is called procedural language. This is C. Okay. Um, so as we proceed, I'm going to be revealing to us how they um, came about, how they were able to bring about this imperative language, which is C. Okay, so first of all, what's C? So we'll be talking about C, and then we're going to be talking about the programming aspect as well. So after everything, we'll combine the two, then give it a definition. All right. So first of all, what is C? So if we check, so according to the alphabetical order, okay, the letter C appears to be the third letter among others, right? So you can agree with me. So we have A, we have B, and then we have C before. I mean, we have A and B before C, right? So there are some letters before C. Okay. Now within the system of now let's relate this to computer. Okay. So within the system of this particular program, which is called C programming. Okay. So you agree with me that there was once a B programming language. Okay. Before this particular C programming language. And if I don't know whether you might have seen somewhere else where some persons call C programming language as the B programming language successor. Okay. Remember when I was talking about VI and VIM text editor. I made mention of VIM being the improved version of VI. Okay, so let's relate that to this particular aspect also. So C programming language happens to be an advanced B programming language. They are the same thing, but the difference is that one is an improved version of the other. Okay, so this B programming language was developed by a guy called Ken Thompson. Okay, I think he is I think US scientist or so. I don't know. So, and he developed this particular programming language before the early 1970s. Okay, that was when he developed the programming language. And I mean, that was when the language came to limelight. Okay, so I don't need to talk much about this one. So, if you want to know or get more information about this, you can kindly go online and do your research. I believe you're going to be seeing some stuff about it, and it's going to be helpful as well. All right. So that's that. Now, what brought about this particular C? Because before it was B, but now it is called C. So we don't. It seems when C came about, like when they developed C, it's as if B um, was not existing anymore. Okay. So before we have B, but now we are having C. So what is the idea behind this particular C? Okay. Now, like I was saying before I start, so I said before you get to C, there are other alphabets you will get to before C, which is A and B. Okay, so that's how the big programming came about. But C um, was how will I put it? So C happens to be the letter next to B, right? So it happens to be B successor, like I said. Okay, and then now, what about this C? And there is this particular guy that also developed this C programming language. The name of the guy is called, I believe you would have seen this in the material. There's a guy named there which is called Dennis Richel, but I think the full name is Dennis McAllister Richel. Okay, I believe that's the full name. Okay, he was also an American scientist. So he was the one behind the C programming language. Okay, and he developed the language um, during, I think, early 90s, early 1970s as well. So the C programming was developed before the early 1970s. YDC was developed 1970, I think 1970 or 1972. Okay, so that was when this guy, which is called Dennis Richard, developed the C programming language. Okay, like I said before, C happens to be the successor. Okay, in terms of programming language. All right, now that's that for how C came about. Okay, and let's talk about the other aspect because we are dealing with C programming. Okay, so we talked about the C, so it is important we talk about the programming aspect as well. All right, so this is what will bring us to the programming language. Okay, now so we've been hearing about programming language, we've been doing stuff about programming language, but then it appears that most of us don't actually know what this programming language means. Okay, so now I'm going to be breaking everything down for us. Okay, and then I'm going to be showing us as well the difference between a programmer and a developer. They are two different stuff. Okay, so if before now you've been calling yourself a developer, meanwhile you're a programmer. Okay, so you are going to be aware of who you really are after the class. Okay, now what is a programming language? Okay, the programming language is a formal language that is used to write instruction or code that the computer can understand and execute. So it's a language um, that you use to write instructions. Okay, so computer can't act on by themselves. Okay, so you need to give the system, you need to give the computer an instruction to follow before you can start acting or trying to execute something or trying to create a particular program or software. Okay, so what programming language does is that you will be able to speak to the computer, you'll be able to give the computer instruction because if you use any other language that the computer does not understand, you're getting errors. Okay, remember during this our C programming that when they introduced the Betty boot. Okay, so if you don't write the code based on the Betty stack, what you'll be getting always is error because basically Betty will seems not to understand what you are writing. Okay, so because of that, instead of trying to execute or the process of executing what you've written, um, she will just prompt out error for you. Okay, so if you try to communicate with the computer without a particular programming language that particular computer will understand, you will seem to be getting error. Okay, so you want to come with want to talk to the computer with its programming language. Okay, now let's break this further. Like I said, say programming language is a formal language, right? That is used to write instruction code that the computer can understand and execute. So one thing is for the computer to understand what you are writing, then another thing is for it to execute. Okay, so that's why you, even though you pass through Betty, okay, so when trying to compile at the same time, you might still get an error. Okay, so another thing is to give the computer an instruction to carry out. Then another thing is for that computer to execute that particular instruction given. Okay, so like I said, let me break this further. So I can say that a programming language or languages, okay, is what serve as a bridge between human programmer and the computer. Okay, so what programming language does, or what programming languages does, is that they serve as a bridge of communication, okay, between the human programmer. Computer don't program themselves, so human program the computer, or human give instruction to the computer. So what serve as a bridge between human programmer and then a computer. It's also known as the programming language. All right. So there is a reason why I use programming languages, and there is a reason why I use human programmers. So as we proceed, you are going to be you are going to understand the reason why I use those terms. Okay. Now, first of all, let's talk about the programming languages. Okay, I would have just go with programming language, but then I decided to introduce languages. The reason is this: um, there are different kind of programming languages. Okay, there are different kind of programming languages. There are series of them. Okay, for example, we have the procedural language. That is where the ALS picked their definition of C programming language from, because under procedural language we have the C programming language, we have the Pascal, we have the Fortran. Those are the three popular languages under this particular language, which is called procedural language. All right. Now we have the object-oriented language. So here we have the Java, the C++, and then we have Python. So these are the three popular language under this particular uh, programming language, which is object-oriented. You can also call it OOL. Okay, so you might have seen it somewhere before now. So that's what it means. Object-oriented language. Now we have another one called. There are many of them, so I'm going to be just. I'll be naming just three or so. Okay, so we have functional languages as well. Okay, so here we have Lisp, we have Erlang, and so on and so forth. All right. So lastly, I'll be talking about the scripting language. So under scripting language, you might have no. Before now, they do give us tasks. They will say we should write script. Okay, and during I think shell, okay, during that share series, okay, they'll say write a script and then particular stuff. All right, so I've explained uh during that class, I told us why um ash and then column, then bin bash, those stuff are not entirely shebang. So I gave us details on how shebang came about. Okay, so I said the hash happens to be the bash, the column happens to be what is it called? Um, sorry, the hash happens to be the hash, while the column happens to be the bank. So combining those two together is what bring about shebang. Why the bin bash? The bin is where the bash is located. And I said bash happens to be the shell. You can call bash shell, okay? Because BH means born again shell. So if I say shell, I'm talking about bash, okay? So they are the same thing. So bin happens to be where you can find um, bash. Okay, and what does bash do? Bash is what helps you to interpret your script. So those answer you wrote during those period is they are called scripts. not the hash colon being bash. So that hash colon being bash has its own meaning. It has its own functionality outside being the shebang. Okay, so every of the objects, or let me say every of the symbol you are seeing there and word has its own meaning. Okay, so that is that about scripting language. All right, so I believe so. If you go back to the definition on the material, they said C is a procedural language, right? So you see where they brought out the definition from procedural language, because under procedural language we have C, and then we have other languages like Pascal and then Fortran. Okay, so basically C is a procedural language, but you know the essence why they talked about the procedural language. So they are actually speaking from this particular point. Okay, now the reason that is that, remember, I'm trying to give us reason why I use the word programming languages and then the word human programmer when I was trying to define programming language, which I said programming language or languages serve as a bridge between the human programmer and the computer. Okay, so I've talked about the programming languages. Okay, and then let's talk about the human programmer. Before that, I said something that there is a difference between the programmer and then the developer. Okay, that you are a programmer doesn't mean you are a developer. And what is the difference? How do you know whether you are a programmer or a developer? All right. Now, a programmer, what a programmer does is that they write code or programs using what? Using programming language. Okay. So what you are doing right now on C, okay. So what you are doing currently is that you are showing that you are a programmer, because all you are doing is writing up code and executing that code. Okay. But then speaking about a developer, it goes beyond that. Okay. At some point, you now graduate from being a programmer to a developer. So there we have the front end. There's nothing like front end programmer, right? So there's front end developer, there's back end developer, and there's full stack developer. Okay, even being a software engineer, you are also called a developer. Okay, the difference is that software engineer covers everything. Okay, put like everything, almost everything you do, how you interact, and everything you do about the computer. So it's safer to be a software engineer. So you can start to be a front end developer, a back end developer, or a full stack, or rather, you can become a software engineer. Okay, so the reason why all of us are here is because we want to become a software engineer. Okay, so the ALSXC, the SC there means software engineering. All right, now what a developer, like I said, goes beyond just writing code. Okay, so all those code you normally write. Okay, a developer is who gather all this. They're going to bring together all this code you've written. All right, and then convert them and use them to produce another thing entirely. Okay, for example, they can build a app based on the code you've written. They can build a drone. They can build a robot. They can build anything. Okay, in fact, they can even build mobile phones using those code you wrote rather. Okay, so that is the work of a developer. So I believe you know the difference between a programmer and a developer. Okay, before I proceed, so that I will not forget. Now, I believe before now, most of us are familiar with HTML, okay, which is hypertext markup language, and then CSS, okay. And I believe maybe somewhere, somehow, someone might have told you that HTML is a programming language. That is wrong. That's not correct. That's not accurate. Okay. Traditionally, HTML is not a programming language. If you look the meaning, it means hypertext markup language. So markup language traditionally are not called programming language. So if you have been writing HTML before now and you're yourself a programmer or a developer, you are wrong. Okay, because HTML is never a programming language. It's just a markup language, as well as CSS. CSS is cascading. Okay, it's just styling. Okay, so all those things are not programming language. All right, and there are different other programming language, but not HTML and CSS. Okay, so if you have that mentality before now, that's not accurate. Okay, so you can go online and make more research on it, and then you will see what I'm talking about. All right, so that's that for that. Okay, okay, so we're going to go to the compiling process of um, the C program. Okay, so after we might have treated the compiling process, then we'll now go to the functions. Okay, where we'll talk about the arrays, the string, the um, how do they call it? I don't know. When we get there, I'm going to talk about it more. Okay, so but then let's talk about the basic aspects first because we must understand the basic before we can move forward. All right, but I trust us that by the end of the class, you are going to start attempting some of the question that you have been finding it difficult to um, solve all this while. Okay, now talking about C compilation component or C compilation model. Okay, I believe when we start Hello World, I think so many of us saw something like preprocessor, saw something like compiler, saw something like assembler, saw something like linking. Okay, I believe that thing was everywhere, but then most of us seems not to have grand knowledge or basic knowledge about these things. They mean a lot, and then um, they are everywhere around your code. Okay, so your ability to be able to understand all these things better, okay, will give you an edge. Okay, when you want to carry out your tasks, when you want to write your code, because we seems to understand everything revolving that code. Okay, so just in case you encounter an error, you can easily trace the error. Okay, because you understand how the structure is, how everything literally came about. Okay, now let's talk about the compilation component. Um, so talking about the compilation component, if you check the tree, starting from the preprocessor to the compiler to the assembler, okay, and then to the linking, everything there, is called compilation process. Not only the compiler that is responsible for compiling your code. Okay, so the moment you use GGC, you are actually doing different stuff at once unknowingly to you. Okay, so it's not only the compiler that is responsible for compiling your codes. Okay, so we have the preprocessor, all right, and then we have the compiler. Okay, so from the preprocessor to the compiler to the assembler, and then lastly to the what linking. At some point, maybe I don't know whether you might have seen somewhere, you will not be seeing assembler, okay, because it's as if the compiler itself is doing the work for the compiling itself and then the assembler. Because whenever your code enter the compiling stage, okay, it's going to convert the compiler is going to convert it to an assembly. Okay, I think we'll talk about that when we get to that aspect. All right. So just in case you see something like preprocessor, compiler, and then link it, don't be confused. They are still the same thing. Okay, it's the same as preprocessor, um, compiler, assembler, and then linking. All right. So basically, let's talk about the first component or the first um, compilation model. Okay. So preprocessor is a compilation model. Compiler is a compilation model. Assembler is a compilation model. Same as the linking, which is the last one. Okay. Now, when you write NEC, let's talk about the preprocessor. Okay, it's kind of deep. Okay, so let's talk about that one first before we go to the next one. All right, now talking about the preprocessor. Okay, what's you will hear most people say is that they collect the source code. Okay, your bulk of code. Okay, your source code. I mean, those code that you put in inside a file. Okay, like they collect the source code and then convert it to uh, a particular file and then give it out to the compiler to do its own work. Now, preprocessor, when you write any C program, okay, now that program you wrote, now program in this case, okay, so when you hear program in programming, programming as a whole, when you hear program is not programming language, okay. Now, program is like a software, All right. So if you open up a software, what you are going to see is a program plus other files that combine to form that particular software. So if I say a program is a software, I am correct. Okay, because if you cut a software, what you are going to see first is a program. Now, if you open up the program, what you are going to see are your box of code. For example, now if they give you a directory or a repo to like they give you a repository along with your terminal, and then they say you should create a particular directory. Okay, so under that directory, they say you should create a README. Okay, so inside the README, they'll tell you to echo something, that is, you write something inside the README, and then after that, they'll say you should write, you should create a particular file, maybe empty or non-empty. Okay, so when you want to push, you don't just push only the README, you push both the files and then the README inside that same directory, okay, under the repo. So combining everything together is what uh, bring about the software. Now, the directory itself happens to be the program because whatever you are doing, you are going to be doing it inside the directory. Meanwhile, the directory is hidden inside your repo. Okay, so that your repo happens to be the software. The directory happens to be your program. Then every other thing inside that repo, your README and all, is going to be your other files that will bring about the full functionality of that particular program. So if you hear someone calling the program a software, that person is correct. Okay, so this is the basic analysis about how those things came about. Okay, now like I was saying, I said when you write any C program, okay, it will first be pre-processed by the compiler component. So compiler component, like I said, they are preprocessor. Compiler component comprises of four different trees, which are different models, okay, which are the preprocessor, the compiler, the assembler, and then the linking. Okay, so when you first write your code, your source code is going to be first be processed by this particular compiler or compilation component called preprocessor. Okay, so even the preprocessor do compile, all right, they compile, they interpret, they convert. Okay, so it's not only the compiler that used to compile. Like I said, when you're using GCC, okay, you are trying to do so many stuff. At some point, you see that this particular file that you did not even create, but you are seeing it as an executed file. Okay, so this is what happens whenever you are compiling. There are so many things working hand in hand. Okay, just to make that compilation method work. So immediately they spot error or anything, even if it's a full stop, a comma, or anything, they are going to deny you access or prompt an error. Okay, and then show you where to correct that error. All right. So whenever you write a code or a program or whatever it is. Okay, so it will first go through the preprocessor, okay, and then before the compiler itself. Now, going through the preprocessor, now those things you wrote are going to come in form of um, a source code. Okay, because that is your source code basically. Okay, source code are your bulk of code combined together. So whenever you see something like .c, so it means that's your source code, okay? And all these things are they contain function, they contain arrays, they contain strings, they contain uh, what they call header files, they contain so many stuffs. Okay, now bringing everything together is what made it a source code. Okay, and whenever you push or you uh, bring your source code, okay, for so for this particular preprocessor to process. All right. Now, when processing that code, what happens is the preprocessor is going to generate a particular file called intermediate file. Okay, so it's going to generate a file called intermediate file. Okay, so the preprocessor will need to generate this particular file first before handing it over to the compiler. Okay, so if, for example, now during the generation and then something occur, if you force that thing or you try to push it further, there will be an error. Okay, so that's why, for example, now after carrying out your project, maybe before the ending, you saw an error, but um, you decided to bypass the error and oh, I told us something about accumulated errors. Okay, and then you go further to push. All right, you might not get affected at that point in time, but when those things bust out, you're going to be having a great issue, and then that particular error might not you might not be able to solve it because the accumulated error you're not even be able to trace them. Okay, so that's why they always advise. That's the reason why they bring about betting. They only advise that if you see any error, make sure you solve the error first before going further. Okay, so make sure you eradicate that error first before going further, because if you try, the computer as a whole can be manipulated. Like as you can see, Sandbox as a server. If I don't want to, I can decide to click done manually, and then it's going to give me my score. Okay, but during checking, okay, they will detect that okay, I did this thing manually, and then they are going to point me out as a cheater or something. Okay, so the computer itself, the system itself can be manipulated because everything there was programmed and developed by human. Okay, so human has the tendency of manipulating it as well. All right. So before you proceed on doing anything, make sure you eradicate every slight errors, okay, you might have made on your code, because trying to force it or manipulate or bypass those errors is going to cause a great issue. Even if it does not cause it that particular moment, it's going to give you a big issue later in the future. Okay. Now, like I said, so this whenever your source code is coming, okay, what group processor does is that it's going to convert the source code into a particular file called intermediate file. Okay, so what the compiler will be waiting for is an intermediate file, like a well accessed intermediate file. All right, so if the compiler notice or sees any error inside the file, it's going to reject it, it's going to bounce back. Okay, and so that is that. So the first thing is that it's going to create the intermediate file. So after creating this particular file, what he will do next is to give this file to the compiler. Remember, the compiler is the second tree when talking about the compilation component. So the compiler happens to be the second to the preprocessor, okay, in the tree of this compilation model. Okay, so after converting, generating everything to as an intermediate file, it's going to push it down to the compiler. But that's not all. Before getting to that, okay, within your source code, there are different stuff that happen that you are not aware of. Okay, now there is this stuff we call preprocessor directives. Okay, within your source code, you will need direction. Okay, and you will need, because you cannot write everything inside your source code. So you at some point you will need to go and pull out some things inside another file entirely and then include them into your source code. Because if you decide to write everything yourself, your code is going to be bulky, and then it's going to be difficult for other developers. Okay, for you to pick whatever you want to pick inside and then include them inside your source code. Okay, so there is this thing called, okay, right? Now, what is preprocessor directive? Okay, we are still under preprocessor. We have not gotten to compiler yet. Okay, we are still under preprocessor. Now, what is preprocessor directive? Okay, there are special instructions that are interpreted by the preprocessor itself. Before now, I said preprocessor um, carry out compilation method, and then they as well interpret. So they compile and then they as well interpret. They generate rather, and then they interpret. Okay, remember they generate a file called intermediate file. But here they are trying to interpret some stuff, okay, within the systems of your code. Okay, so the preprocessor directives, there are special instructions. Okay, there are instructions, and there are other ones that are special. Okay, so if you use that instructions can be general. Okay, so I can decided to introduce a particular instruction on another programming language and it's going to work. But when it comes to special instructions, it means those instructions are dedicated to that particular environment or language. So if you use those instructions outside those programming language, um, it might not work, or in fact it's not going to work, because that's what made them special. Okay, so every programming language has their own special instruction outside the general instruction. Okay, so this particular preprocessor directive happens to be a special instruction dedicated to the preprocessor model. Okay. Now, what it does is that it interpret this particular instruction is being interpreted by preprocessor. So if compiler come and try to interpret this special instruction, it will not succeed. It's not going to work. Okay, that's what make it a special instruction. Okay. Yes. So now before I explain this concept, okay. So now there are different kind of preprocessor directives. I'm going to be naming three. I'm going to be giving us three, and then um, producing some examples. Okay, and then move forward from there. All right. So the first one. Okay. So the first type of preprocessor directive is called the include directives. Okay. Sorry. I think after this thing, I'm going to generate a meeting on Meet. Okay. So there, we're going to be asking our question because there's no way you ask a question here. I'll get a shot. If you can type, you type it then. Or if you want us to go to Google Meet and then do the question and answer, you can do that. But then if you want to type it here, no problem as well. Okay, so let's continue. Now, talking about the different kind of preprocessor directives. Um, like I said, I'm going to be giving us three. So the first one is include directive. Okay, now what is the function of this include directive? Okay, now, okay, what is the function of this include directive? Okay, the include directive, what it does is that they are used. Okay, this is to include the content of another file into the current source file. Okay, so what include directive means is that they are being used to include a content from another file to other source file. All right, so let me write the symbol for how you can know the include directive. Okay, so you're going to change the comment section. I'm sorry, that's a mistake. That was a mistake. So this is what it means. This is the symbol. Okay, so let me write the symbol for include directive. Okay, so as you can see, something like hash include. Okay, so the hash include happens to be the symbol for include directives. Okay, so what is the function of this particular um, kinds of preprocessor directive, which is called the include directive? Like I said, it is used to include the content of another file. Okay, um, here into the current source file. Okay, for example, now you might have seen something like hash include, then you see something like bracket, and then stdio.h. Okay, many of us have been calling those whole that full stop as the header file. That's not true. Okay, now the hash include happens to be a kind of preprocessor directive called include directive. Why this stdio.h happens to be the header file. So when you call everything header file, you are wrong. Remember when I was explaining the shebang? So if you decided to call the hash column bin bash as a shebang, you are wrong because they have different method of carrying out their operations. Okay, and I told us how the shebang came about. Now, if you call the hash include plus the STDO, which is called the standard the IDM means input, the O means output. So that thing means standard input output. So dot H. So that dot H is what making a file called header file. Okay, so the standard input and output is a file. Now, dot H is what bring about the header. Okay, so hash include happens to be a particular kind of preprocessor directive called the include directive, while the standard input output dot H happens to be what you call the header file. So henceforth, don't call everything the header file, okay? Because it is the hash include, which is the include directory, is what gives what is it called? The header file a direction, okay, to the preprocessor itself for interpretation, okay? And the essence of that header file and then the hash include is to include a content. So whenever you're writing a function, whenever you're writing a program or a bulk of code, okay, you will want to include this particular include directive and the head file, okay, so that you'll be able to pick some files inside the header file, okay, that you will not need to include inside your particular source of code. Okay, so during compilation, preprocessor is going to eradicate this hash include and going to include only the header file, okay, because the hash include itself has already given done its work by giving it the header file a direction to the preprocessor. So the preprocessor is going to eradicate this hash include and then um, admit the header file only, okay, and then everything is what's going to be compiled and turned to, and it's going to generate them as an intermediate file and give it to the compiler, okay. So that hash include you've been seeing is coming from an aspect of preprocessor directive called the include directive, okay. Yeah, so that's basically everything about that um about the aspect of that particular pre-processor directive called the input directive. So whenever you see hash input, it shouldn't be strange to you anymore because you already know where it's to be placed and then how like its functionality, right, and how the whole stuff was derived. Okay, so if you see it on your code, you should be able to read and then you should be able to talk about this particular stuff more, okay? Because at the moment you've already gotten enough knowledge as regard to this particular stuff. Okay, now this will take me to the next um, kinds of the preprocessor directive. Now, the first one is include, right? Include directive. Now, the second one is called the macro definition. Okay, can you hear me clearly? Check the code. If you can hear me, please, you can just okay. So, um, let's continue. All right, so the second one here is called, I think it's still breaking. Like, is it still breaking now? How about that? Can you hear me? Or the stuff is still breaking? Can you hear me, please? Type or comment on the group chat. Okay, so let's uh, continue. Okay, now we have spent I think almost an hour and we haven't gotten to anywhere. All right, so the goal is not for us to rush. The goal is we're trying to understand what we are doing. Okay, it's for our own benefit. All right, so right now we are going to be going to the second aspect, which is called the okay. Now, what is the essence or what is the functionality of this particular kind of preprocessor directive? Oh, why is this breaking now? Is this breaking now? Is this breaking now? Please just confirm before I continue. Just confirm first. Let me know. Where is it breaking before I can continue? Um, please confirm whether if it's clear or not, because I don't want a situation whereby the video will now be having some audio issues. Okay, it's okay. All right, so let's continue. All right, so talking about the second type or kinds of, okay, so talking about the second um, kind or aspect of preprocessor directives, which is called the macro definition. So the first one is include directive, right? Now talking about the second one, which is macro definition. Okay. Now, what does this particular preprocessor directive does? Kind of preprocessor directive does. Okay. Now, what macro definition does is that it allows you to define macros. Now, I'm going to be talking about what macro means. Okay. So don't be confused. Every of my terms or every of the terms I'll be using, I'm going to be breaking them down for our own understanding. Okay. Remember when I came across a program, I tried all my best to tell us everything about it, what the program means, all right? So whenever you see something like this macro, okay, don't um don't beat yourself too much. Just relax. Of course, I'm going to explain them well. All right, now talking about the macro definition. Now, what macro definition does is that it allows you to define macros, okay, macros that it helps you to perform what I call text substitution, okay, in your source code. Now let me explain. Um, what this particular stuff does is this. For example, you want to how do I put this? Okay, you want to include some particular line of code, very long, okay, in your source code, and you notice that you're going to be repeating this code more than twice, thrice, or I don't know. You can just use this particular code is supposed to be used all around your source code. Okay, so you don't want to go through the stress of typing this long. For example, now let's say it's up to 30 letters. Okay, combined. You will not want to be typing all these things around your source code. It's going to make your code look bulky now, and it's going to make the code not readable. Okay, so an alternative was derived, okay, whereby you don't need to actually type this thing, okay, you don't need to actually type it, but then you can make use of it. All right, so this is where the macro definition comes in. Like I said, I called it a text. Okay, I think we have a lady here and then we have a guy. Okay, so Scholastica and then MOD. Okay, so I'm going to be using you both as an example now. For example, now we came together, like we want to have a get together, and then we went out for, or we go out for a party. Okay, now MOD and Scholastica have not met each other once, but then Scholastica happens to be MOD's crush or something. All right, so the moment MOD saw Scholastica, there are two things that will come to his mind, and the first thing is to collect his contact, and then the second thing is to save the contact on his phone. Right now, let's assume after okay, so let's assume after everything, MOD end up collecting Scholastica contact that is our phone number. Okay, now the second condition to be met there is that MOD is going to save that particular number inside his phone, right? Now it's not going to save the number with the number. Okay, so it's going to save the number with Scholastica's name. Okay, now reason is this. So when going through his contact, all you need to do is just to search the number with a name. Okay, not searching the number with a number. Okay, and then if you want to make a call, it's going to search for the number with the name, and then during call, what processes the call is not the name. What processes the call is the number. Okay, now what is happening around those stuff is this: is that we are trying to substitute one thing for the other for easy access. Okay, now the name, which is Scholastica, happens to be the macro. in this sense. The number is your actual text that you think that appears too long for you to be repeating always in your source code. Okay, now a miss was derived whereby all you need to do is just to substitute the number. I mean, yes, substitute the number for the name. So instead of using the number, you now started using the name. But then you will need to drive a means first program, okay, whereby you'll be able to add this particular thing inside the heading of your code so that you will always point to that code, okay, as a means of extracting what you actually need from that particular stuff, okay. Yes. So I think I have example of how these things work. Let me check. Let me check. Um, let me check. Let me check. All right. Let me type the symbol for macro definition. It is. I believe you might have seen something like this. Hash define. Okay. Now this is an example of macro definition. Okay. Now you might have seen something like hash define and then some particular word, very short, not long. Okay. Now if you open up that word, what you will be seeing is another thing entirely. But then inside your source code, what you are expected to use is that word that's being defined. Okay, because you don't want to be repeating all those long words inside your source code. It's going to make your code unclear, unreadable, and then it's going to make it look buggy. And when other programmer or developer sees your code, he or she might not be able to read it. And when that kind of stuff happens, there's going to be a confusion, and there's going to be a confusion in terms of merging and then all. Okay, now you might have seen this hash define in your code. Yes, you might have seen it in your code. Okay, so what it means is that you are trying to substitute something for something. All right, you are trying to substitute a particular word, let me say a long word. Okay, so this thing might be function, might be arrays, it might be anything, but then you are trying to substitute something for something for easy access, okay, and for you to be able to write a clean code. All right, so these are the little things Betty check out for. Okay, so the moment you refuse to include all this kind of stuff inside your code, Betty is going to flag you off. Okay, so it's going to prompt out error. All right. So what this one means is that you're substituting something for another. Okay, and there's no way I can write it. I would have this explanation I just made. I will just convert it to a code. Okay, and then show us. Maybe on our next class, I would have find a way to um how will I put it? Maybe using the whiteboard or something to write. But then just make use of what we have at the moment. All right. Now that is that for what is it called? Macro definition, which is another kind of what preprocessor directive. Remember, the first one is include directive, and then the second one is macro definition. Okay, now macro definition is what is behind your contact list on your phone. Okay, so just in case you want to develop a phone, so these are one of the things you should consider, or you want to develop an app, okay, that will include contacts and then you're able to save like a phone book or something. Okay, so these are the things you should look out for. All right, so you must have the idea of how this particular stuff works. Okay, it works for different stuff outside contact though. In as much that you are substituting in that particular program, you will need something like this. Okay, yes, so you need something like this as well. All right, so these things are to be considered. Right. So that is that for the second kind of preprocessor directives. I would have asked us to ask questions, but then there's no way we can do that here. So, like I said, maybe at the end of the class we'll go to meet, okay, and then begin our questions and answer, okay, or you can just drop your question on the group chat, and then I'm going to access it and then attend to it here. Okay, if you are not clear with it, you can as well type it there, and then you can. Okay, I think I'm going to open the lecture theater group so that there you can ask your questions so that you not disrupt general group chat. So you ask your question there, drop your questions, and then whatever you are not clear with. Let me do that now. Sir. If you are not on the group chat, just tell Betty to give you the link. Go with the normal stuff, this is cheat updates, okay, and then follow the prompts. Betty is a bot, so it's going to reply you. Follow the prompts, and then you are going to get the group link. So make sure you join because I'm about to open the group now. The group has been on locks, so I'm going to open the group now so that you can drop your questions there, okay, so that I can attend to them before we end the live. All right. Um, I'm a little confused. How will I open this thing? Okay, group settings. Group settings, group settings, group settings. Send message. Please, someone confirm whether you can send message to the group now. Uh, please confirm whether you can send message to the group now. If you can, just drop a message there so that I'll confirm. Okay, so drop a message inside the lecture theater group so that I'll confirm whether the group is open or not. So that is where you are going to be dropping your answers, I mean your questions, so that I can attend to them. Okay, and so this is the group here, right? As you can see, like this particular group. So you can drop your stuff there, and yeah, someone just raised hand here. So please drop a message there. Let's continue. Okay. So I've already opened the group now. So let me type something. You can drop your question here. Okay. So make sure you drop your question here. So if I see them, I'll be able to attend to them. Okay. If you don't drop it now and I end the live, I might not be able to say anything about them again. Okay. So that's that for that. Now will be moving to the last part. Okay. Of remember after this preprocessor, we'll be talking about compiler, right? So after compiler, I'll find a way to rush this whole compilation model, compilation component, so that we'll go directly to function. Okay, so when we get to function, by that time you'll be able to even write your code yourself. Okay, it will be like, for example, now I'll just give you an assignment like a story, then you write your code based on those stories. Okay, so when you execute those code, what is going to be talking about is that particular story. Okay, like uh, I gave an instance of MOD and then Scholastica. So in my book here, I was able to drive a code based on that particular narration. Okay, so we want to be able to do that as well. Okay, so that when we execute your code or anybody else execute your code, what is going to be seen is those step by step instructions you take when writing the code, which is based on the story. Okay, now so let's go to the last part. Let's go to the last part, which is um, so the third one here is called conditional compilation. Okay. So this one is long share, but then let me just fast. Let me just try and round it up. Okay. Conditional compilation. This allows you to conditionally compile certain parts of your code based on specific condition. Okay. Now, so I'm going to use. Let me give us an example. Okay. For example, you were given a contract, okay, by this particular company, let me say a bank, okay, to build a bank app for them. All right. You want to develop a system, or let me say um, a particular environment, or yes, a particular environment whereby um, the customers will be able to drop their details, their data. Okay. For example, hope you are aware that data are being used for improving um, communities. Okay, Now you might have heard me saying I need you use data on the group chat so that I can use it to improve the boat, which is Betsy. Okay, so that um at some point, whatever you say, Betty is going to generate an answer, okay, based on your question. So data is needed. So when if Google, okay, so when you hear Google, WhatsApp, Facebook, thereabout, okay, asking for your data. Now, what they are trying to do is this: that they are trying to use your data to improve their community. Okay, now, like I was saying, let's assume you were given a contract by a particular company, let's say a bank, okay, to develop a bank app. Okay, now you want to include a session in the app where you'll be able to collect the customer details. For example, their name, their full name, their date of birth, um, um, what is some other stuff like that. Okay, now what you are trying to do is that now if you notice your birthday, you see bank sending you um, birthday messages. Okay, now what happens there is this particular aspect of preprocessor directive, which is called the compilation or the conditional compilation. Okay, like I said, what it does is that it will allows you to conditionally compile some part of your code. Okay, you've written some bulk of code. Okay, so within that code, you have a part um whereby like that particular part, what it does is that it collects your customers' data. Okay. Meanwhile, everything is inside your code. Okay. So if you introduce this particular preprocessor directive, which is called the conditional compilation, it's going to spot some part of your code. Okay. And then during compilation, if, for example, now, if you want that particular aspect, for example, if your customer birthday is today is July 2nd, right? If it's July 2nd, then you should print out something like happy birthday with so name, okay? But during compilation, if that condition is not met, then you should print out another thing. For example, have a good day or some modificational codes. Okay. So even though everything is going to be compiled, all right, but when it gets to that particular stage, that particular session, okay, this particular preprocessor directive is going to take charge because it will conditionally compile that certain part of code, okay, based on what you have collected, based on the data, okay. So if the person's birthday is July 2nd, then you are going to be seeing something like printf. It's going to print out the birthday, for example, if conditional statement, if customer A, okay, birthday is July 2nd. Then you close the bracket down, you see something like printf, happy birthday, so like customer A, which is the name, okay? So all these things, okay, are being compiled in a particular code, but then being spotted out by this particular conditional compilation. Okay, so this thing is very, very important if you want to compile some part of your code based on some certain condition during compilation. Okay, during compilation, everything's being compiled at once. But when it gets to some particular part of your code, okay, now there should be another thing entirely. Okay, there should be a prompt or something else. All right. Now that prompt might be happy birthday. That prompt might be thank you. That prompt might be any other thing. So if the condition of a birthday is like if during compilation, then you see that someone is celebrating birthday or the birthday of the person falls on that day, then print out happy birthday. But if not, continue to compile, but then print out another thing entirely. So that thing might be have a great day, or today is Thursday, today is Sunday, today is blah 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 blah. All right. So depending on what you want, okay. So depending on what you want, now you can. All right. So depending on what you want, all right. So that is the essence of this particular conditional compilation. So conditional compilation might contain your hash include, might contain your macro definition. Okay, so everything, like I said, it works during compilation. Okay, so during compilation, if you want a particular part of your code to meet a particular condition, okay, you introduce this particular system. Okay, this is called what now? The conditional compilation. So when it gets to that part of the code, then it's going to place a condition. if the condition is met, okay, if your code meets that particular condition, it's going to execute it and print out something, okay. But if your code does not meet that particular condition, then it's going to do something again. It's not going to ignore. It's going to do another thing entirely. And this time around, it's not going to be something like happy birthday. It's going to be something else entirely. So this is what your customer sees, and then make them get attached to whatever stuff you are doing. Okay, so it's like a picture. Yeah, they call it a picture. Okay, you might not include this particular stuff at first. Okay, so that is why you see some person going on maintenance. Okay, so during maintenance they might spot some things that they need to add and they need to remove. Okay, so if you want to add a particular feature whereby um all this thing I'm saying is going to, like, you want them to happen, then you can include something like this. Okay, so that is the essence of this particular kind of preprocessor directive, which is called the conditional compilation. Okay, and yes, so that's basically everything about um, preprocessor. Okay, so if you have any question, can you drop it on the group chat? Okay, kind of way so I can attend to it. All right, so this will be the end of this particular um, meeting. Okay, as regard to the lecture, right? So we are done with preprocessor. So on our next meeting, we are going to be going to the compiler. Okay, so there are different kind of stuff being carried out as well on compiler. Okay, and I will rush it. Okay, so that I'll be able to compile the four models, the four compilation model, so that we can go to functions and then we can start attempting our questions ourselves. Okay, so that's the goal, and then we are going to be achieving that as well. All right. So if you have any question, kindly drop it here or drop it on the WhatsApp group chat. Okay. Um, for so that I can attend to them. And then we can. There is a guy that was asking me a question during that last class. I've forgotten his name. I don't know, maybe due to network. The guy was unable to ask because he left. So if you are here at this point, you can ask your question now or drop it on the group chat, lecture theater group chat, so I can attend to it and then to be clear enough. Because he said something like he saw something on YouTube and someone saw something like that before. So during our meeting, he brought about the question. So we were able to trash it and then we went to Google and then we confirmed the whole stuff. What I said was actually true. So I think that's the same thing that happened to this particular guy as well. He saw something on YouTube that seems to be like he seems to be confused about it. So I don't know. If you are here, drop the question again. Um, let's answer it. Okay. So this question and answer section. So if you have any question, please kindly ask your question. Okay. Kindly ask your question. So this particular tutorial or let me say meeting is going to be saved. Hopefully, I don't know my way around this. This is my first time of using YouTube Live. Okay, so just in case I maybe mistakenly do something I was not supposed to do, I don't know. But then it's not going to happen. Sha. Okay, so you can start asking your questions now. Yeah, thank you. You can start dropping your questions. So thank you. Dropping your questions. Okay. Um, the lecture theater group chat. Okay, it's opened already. Okay, and as regard to our quiz, it's going to take place as well on the lecture theater group. Okay, it's going to take place over there as well. Alright, so during our quiz, like I said, I've started working on it. I've started adding questions and then answer. As you can see, I posted it on YouTube. So if you have not seen it, then you can go there and check how the code is going to work. Okay, so that's how it's going to work. So I'm going to integrate it. So the lecture theater group. So that's the place where we will which is going to take place. Okay, so kindly drop your questions if you have any. Drop your questions because after now I might not be able to attend to them. So if you have any questions, please kindly ask. So ask your question. Let me check this thing. So ask your question. So this thing on our Come on, so YouTube have already advertising their stuff. So, so, if you have not subscribed, please do it to subscribe. If you have not subscribed, do it to subscribe. Thank you. You. If you have any question, ask your question now. If you have any question, ask your So Jeff Motive is my brand name. So let me confuse. Okay, let's check. Someone sent a message in the group chat. Software engineer, salary 900,000 a year. Okay. So please drop your question. Because the next 6 minutes I'm going to be ending this live. Okay, so if you have any question, please kindly drop it now. Because after now I might not be able to attend to it.